Just press the Let's Go Live button, and you know what that means on this lovely Friday. We gotta wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internets before we can go ahead and get started. It looks like we're live on the YouTubes. We got our Rumble friends booting up. What's up to our friends? Of course, our Membos. We're live on Locals. Woo! Telegram's fired up. That's tremendous, my friends. You know what that means. We can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia, and today we are talking about 27 states objecting to Donald Trump's ballot removal in Colorado. This Amicus Brief is fresh out of the oven. It just dropped, and so we're going to hop on into it. You can see a couple of the states there. Indiana, West Virginia, and 25 others now knocking on the door of the Supreme Court saying, hello, this Trump removal stuff is total madness and nonsense. This is a democratic republic, and we should be allowed to vote for the people that we want to vote for. So we're going to go through that. It's right at the Supreme Court. Question is, are they going to accept this case, and what is it going to look like when they do? So we'll go through that. We've also got some reaction from Jamie Raskin. We'll see what he says after the fact. And today is the day, my friends, that Jenna Griswold is certifying the candidates to Colorado's presidential primary ballot, right? So today is when they're all going to be on there, and they're going to be printed on. But whatever the Supreme Court does, it could come back and revert, right? It could relate back to the original order. And so, in other words, people in Colorado, they could go and vote for Trump and then turn around and have their vote negated. Okay, that's the Democratic plot by Crazy Eyes Griswold there. So we'll hear from her, we'll hear from Raskin, and we'll see what's going on up there at the Supreme Court, all in our first segment on the day. Then we're going to turn our attention over to what's happening in the Supreme Court as well, because House Democrats are now attacking Judge Clarence Thomas. You know him, this gentleman here, brilliant judge. And people are saying, like this guy, Dan Goldman, and this guy, Hank Johnson, who we're going to listen to remind us that it's possible for Guam to capsize, you know, the island. And we're going to hear from people like AOC. They all signed on to this letter, and they sent it right over to the Supreme Court. And they said, hey, Clarence, you must recuse yourself because of your wife. We don't like your wife. And so she's done some bad things, like talking to people who were accurate about the election. And so you have to recuse yourself. And it's signed by a bunch of Democrats. They're all in there. They're all excited about this. So we'll go listen to them before we hear Dan Goldman, one of the dumbest people in Congress who basically bought his Congress seat. He's going to say, Congress might need to act on this. If Clarence Thomas is not going to recuse himself, well, then maybe Congress should do something about it. Okay, we have to do something here. So we see now they're going to try to get this to a 4-4 decision so that maybe squishy John Roberts joins the Democrats like he did with Obamacare or something. We'll see. All in our second segment. And then lastly, it's Insurrection weekend, my friends. Happy Insurrection anniversary. I hope you're having a great Insurrection weekend. I'm going to have a great Insurrection. I don't know what I'm going to insurrect. I don't know. Maybe a whole, can ice cream. We'll see. But here you can see this goofy Capitol Hill police officer, also called Harry Dunn. He did this really goofy video, and he's like standing here. We're going to watch this. He's running for Congress now. Okay, most of them just write books, but he's actually running for Congress. And so we're going to listen to what he had to say because he released this bizarre campaign video. You can see it looks like this. He's like walking through the halls of this recreated fake January 6th thing. It's like, did they call the same FBI people up like to do it again? I don't know. So we'll go through it. He released it. We're going to watch it. It's kind of a painful thing to watch, but stick with it with me because this guy, we know here, Stave Baker over on X at TPC4USA. He's done great work on this, been really all over these guys. And following them along and pointing out that Harry Dunn even dropped his magazine. Okay, this is Harry Dunn turning this corner here, and he bumps his rifle, and his magazine falls out from below. Derp, 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 derp. So we'll listen to him, and of course, there's a lot of inconsistencies. He's testifying, I was here, turns out he's not, and all the things. So we'll listen to him. He's running for Congress now, probably be hanging out with AOC. We'll get an update on the pipe bomber. FBI still looking for the pipe bomber. They can't find him. Where'd he go? I don't know. So we'll see what they say. Biden released a new insurrection video where he's castigating half the country. And this was one of the wildest propaganda pieces that we saw this morning on our members only stream, where they actually recreated Trump's voice with AI. Okay, so they have Trump saying with AI that we're going to institute martial law. And then they also call Trump like evil, and everybody who supports him, they use the word evil, like he's actually evil. And what's funny about this is they say this is not a movie, and it's like literally actually a movie. So it's just weird. Their propaganda is hitting new levels of delusion. And so we'll certainly unpack all of that and more today. And as you can see, we got 3 beautiful segments today. I'm grateful that you are here and with us on this lovely Friday, the first Friday of the year, my friends. And so we're into 2024, and you can see we're coming in hot. We got 27 states now joining ranks. To say what Colorado's doing is insane. So we'll go through all of that. This morning, we had a great members only stream. We're talking about this wild situation out of New York. They are now suing the busing companies. Okay, so previously we talked about how Mayor Adams is going to charge the bus drivers with misdemeanors for bringing in immigrants into their sanctuary city. It's like, I thought you wanted them. But now he's suing the bus companies, listed a bunch of them. We went through the lawsuit. $700 million is what he wants from these bus companies. And so we can't wait for this one. I mean, they're going to just respond. They're going to say, hello, idiot, Commerce Clause, dum-dum. We all have legitimate asylum here in the country thanks to Joe Biden. And so they're free to go wherever they want. So it's fun. Of course, they're having a tough time there in New York, blaming everybody other than themselves and Joe Biden. Bizarre situation. But we talked about this morning on our members only morning stream. We love our members. Couldn't do what we do without our members. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is a great place to become a member. And you can also join up on YouTube. If you join on YouTube, we love you there. You can join us on the after party every day after the show. We have a members only after party. And the best place to join us there is Locals. But if you join us on YouTube, go over to the community tab section on the channel homepage on YouTube. Navigate down for the members only Telegram group link. We'll see you there on the after party. We've also got our website. So if you want to sign up for our daily newsletter, we'd love it if you did that. Go to robertgovea.com. It's a great way for us to stay in touch in case anything happens on the platforms. We always have our line of contact. We have confirmation that we can communicate. We also have our PDFs, all the PDFs that we go through, we post on the website. We also post reports. So if you just want to skim through what we talked about in a segment, you can get your news there at robertgovea.com. You can also access this mind map. When you sign up for the newsletter, we'll get you access to the mind map. We also have our latest watcherlodge.com. This is our newest project. It's dedicated to sovereignty and self-development. We're kicking it off with a good fitness challenge to start the year right, learn the platform, build some energy in our community, and be healthy. We want to outlive, we want to outlift, we want to be stronger and have much bigger biceps than the left. And we're going to do that together. It helps our thinking. It helps our longevity. It's very good. So 2024 Fitness Challenge is underway. Today's the last day to sign up and join us. We're giving away 1 cash prize. We're giving away scholarships to the Lodge. We've got a lot of other stuff queued up for the Lodge. So come grab it. Come join us. Watcherlodge.com. Today's the last day to sign up and join us. All you got to do to sign up is just drop a comment. What are you doing for the next 31 days? That's one positive thing for your fitness consistently. So whether it's weightlifting, walking, meditating, doing something that's good for your health, that's how we're starting this year. So come and check it out, watcherlodge.com. All right. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes, my friends, because here we go. 27 states now joining ranks to object to Trump's removal from the Colorado ballot. And they're knocking at the Supreme Court's door. They're saying, hello, we are here with an amicus brief, a friend of the court filing that we are sending to the judges to confirm with them that 27 states agree Trump should not be removed. This is insanity. We live in a place where we call it a democratic republic, which means there's a democratic process by which we vote for our representatives. So here, 27 states submitted this. Raskin is responding. Jenna Griswold is certifying the candidates. But of course, depending on what the Supreme Court can do, they can revert this all the way back. And even if Trump shows up on the ballot, if the Supreme Court, for some reason, I hope they don't do this, but if they said, well, states' rights, and you guys can do whatever you want with your ballots, I think that'd probably be the end of the country. But it would also allow her to have Trump's name on the ballot. A bunch of people could vote for him, circle that bubble in, and still throw him off. So it's all kind of been craftily concocted to give him the possibility to keep him off the ballot and we'll see if that ultimately happens. But 27 states say, that's insane. We definitely don't want that to happen. And so you can see they have submitted it here. It is in the Supreme Court of the United States. The case is Donald Trump versus the Anderson litigants. Trump is petitioning to the Supreme Court. Why? Because he lost in Colorado. He actually won a portion of the case at the lower level district court in Colorado under Sarah B. Wallace, the district court judge. She got reversed up on the appeal at the Colorado Supreme Court. They found, the 14th Amendment, Section 3 does apply to Trump, and they booted him off the ballot, pending decisions from the Supreme Court, which is where we're at now. So this is the brief of the amici curiae, all the friends of the court, Indiana, West Virginia, and 25 other states, and the Arizona legislature. Wow. Shout out. Also in support of Donald Trump, the petitioner. Now, a bunch of lawyers are here. Obviously, it's 27 states and the Arizona legislature all in on this. In fact, let's just fast forward and see who signed off on this. We got a bunch of people down here at the bottom, bunch of lawyers. So it's coming out of the office of Indiana. We've got West Virginia. We're some of the main signatories there. But we've also got Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas. Okay, our attorney general here in Arizona is a big lib, so we couldn't have our name on this. So we got our legislature instead, which is still a good showing. Florida's on the list. Georgia's here. Shout out to Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, our friends in North Dakota, New Hampshire. We got Nebraska's on the list. Montana, Missouri, Mississippi, Louisiana's here. Kentucky's in the house, along with Ohio, Wyoming. Sorry, Liz. Oklahoma, South Carolina. We got South Dakota, and we've got Tennessee, Texas, the great state, Utah, Virginia, and then the president of the Senate of the state of Arizona, not an AG. So a bunch of people on this, over half the states in the country, signaling that they're very irritated about this. And here is what they submit to the court. Dear Supreme Court, question for you. Did the Colorado Supreme Court err in ordering President Trump excluded from the 2024 presidential primary ballot? Did those 4 Democrats who voted to remove him, did they goof? Fast forwarding into the meat and potatoes of the filing, you can see this is a petition for a writ of certiorari in the Supreme Court of these United States. Bunch of case law being cited here. Now here is the introduction. 27 states, right. Supreme Court, this court has warned judges away from intervening in the most intensely partisan aspects of American political life. Kind of a good policy. Court involvement in pure politics can bring delay, can bring uncertainty, can harm the political process, bring partisan enmity to the courts. And this case with Trump involved perhaps the, italicized, the literal most intensely partisan event one can imagine, a presidential election. Now, even when courts have been compelled to address questions that are related to elections, it has stressed that the Constitution's design and the selection of the president leaves it to the people through their legislatures and to the political sphere. The courts are not the appropriate body to resolve these things unless the other things are not going to work for you. In other words, the state legislatures aren't going to do it. The political sphere isn't going to do it. We all want to vote for the guy. So they say, why don't we just file lawsuits and then some hack secretaries of state can just remove him? This notion that the courts should show restraint in presidential election cases advances a common sense ideal. Voters, not lawyers, choose the president. That's from another Third Circuit case. But yet, the Colorado Supreme Court showed no restraint here. Instead, amid a hotly contested election, it has barred a former president, Trump, and leading candidate from its presidential ballot. Now, the state court and their choice to declare Trump an insurrectionist under Section 3 has vast consequences that reach far beyond Colorado. These are national elections. Now, as to primaries in particular, states themselves have no constitutionally mandated role in selecting these people for presidential and vice presidential candidates at all. So in the context of this is uniquely national. No state is an electoral, quote, island because the impact of the votes cast in each state is affected by the votes cast, or in this case, not cast, in the other states. It's a nation. Hello. The amici states, so the friends here filing this state, have a strong interest in protecting their electorates, like the people in Colorado who have been disenfranchised, from actions that dilute their citizens' choices. You used to be able to vote for who you wanted to in Colorado, not anymore. So the Colorado's court decision to dilute Trump's votes in the upcoming election cannot stand for several reasons. It threatens, first of all, to throw the 2024 presidential election into chaos. Yet courts are supposed to give a due regard for the public interest in orderly elections. Someone tell that to Judge Chutkan. At the same time, the state court took on a question that the Constitution says belongs to Congress. Colorado ripped this away from them. 14th Amendment is not self-executing, and the court in Colorado purported to decide what events might constitute an insurrection, even though the definition rests solely on a series of purely political judgments. These are not legal judgments. Those are political questions. And to make matters worse and more complicated, the Colorado courts decided complicated constitutional questions through a truncated state process that denied former President Trump any opportunity for basic discovery, the ability to subpoena documents and to compel witnesses, workable timeframes to adequately investigate and to develop defenses, and the opportunity for a fair trial. That comes from the dissent. In other words, no due process at all. Nothing there. Trump just had to sit there and take it because the judge said this is good enough for you. The Colorado Supreme Court has cast itself into the political thicket, and it's now up to the Supreme Court to pull it out. They stepped in it. We got to clean them off. Confidence in the integrity of our electoral process is critical to the functioning of our democracy. Now, if the Colorado decision stands, that critical confidence will be harmed. Many Americans will become convinced that a few partisan actors like Crazy Eyes Greenwald and Shenna Bellows have contrived to take a political decision out of the ordinary voters' hands. And so that's why this court should accept and grant the petition from Trump, saying this court's immediate intervention is required. All right. The Colorado court's decision is going to create widespread chaos. Most obviously, it casts confusion into an election cycle that is literally just weeks away. Beyond that, it also upsets the respective roles of Congress, the states, and the courts. And the 14th Amendment, perhaps because of the very sorts of problems described above, it anticipates that Congress will decide whether somebody's capable of holding office. The structure of the Constitution, the history, the authority of this court all confirms that. And the court should grant this petition to prevent state courts from usurping Congress's power. Now, in deciding that former President Trump engaged in insurrection, Colorado Democrats, they fashioned a definition of insurrection that they just made up. It is standardless. It's vague. The best available evidence equates insurrection with rebellion, a more demanding standard than Colorado courts settled on. But what constitutes an insurrection is not a question that the court should answer at all. It's a political question, not for them. Now they tell us the reason for granting this is there will be chaos. It says our country, Supreme Court, these are the 27 states writing, hello. We need authoritative, consistent, and a uniform answer as to whether former President Trump is constitutionally eligible for president. Granting the petition would at least give us some clarity in that direction. Saying the president occupies a unique place under the Constitution. He is the only one of two elected officials who represent all of the voters in the nation. So when hack states like Colorado's secretary, when they state and they try to impose a more stringent ballot access, they have impacted beyond the state's own borders. And the practical impact makes it essential to have a single and one national answer to decide whether someone is eligible or not. Saying the Constitution itself recognizes the need for national answers, we have a single set of eligibility requirements for president: age, citizenship, residency. States cannot modify that. It's already articulated there. It also gives Congress, an elected and national body that is capable of giving a single answer, responsibility for determining whether the president can continue in the office via impeachment. These provisions reflect the necessity of consistent and uniform rules for presidential candidates. One set of rules for everybody. Now, previously, courts from coast to coast have warned against efforts to use state courts to determine the eligibility of candidates. James Madison thought that it was out of the question that the federal judiciary would be called upon to decide the presidency, let alone the 50 state systems. That's ridiculous. Now that the Colorado court has intruded into an area where courts have previously feared to trend until Trump, everything's changing for Trump, swift intervention is essential. Court orders affecting elections, especially conflicting orders, can themselves result in voter confusion and consequent incentive to remain away from the polls. Yeah, what if a bunch of people who are not ultra plugged into the election, they just think, well, I guess Trump's not on the ballot. Guess I'm not going to vote. Guess I'm going to stay home. Like as of now, right? Talk about voter suppression. As an election draws closer, that risk is also going to increase. With Colorado declaring Trump ineligible and other courts rejecting those challenges, conflict and chaos is already here. Voters who may wish to cast their ballots for former Trump cannot know whether he will be ultimately excluded from the ballot in their state or others. You go in, you vote for him, but you don't really know if it's going to stick. They may wonder whether a little non-mutual offensive collateral estoppel is all it takes for former President Trump to be excluded from ballots across the nation. Okay, so this is the same legal term that we analyzed in Maine. So what happened in Maine, essentially, is they just they copied the homework from Colorado. Okay, collateral estoppel is they just copied their homework. So Colorado, they've already got the answers here. So we're just going to adopt that one and just accept it. And that's what Shanna Bellows did. So they say, well, okay, if you're going to say Colorado can do this, other states are going to fall like dominoes. So will voters cast their votes for a candidate who might later be disqualified? Maybe. If they do, what becomes of their votes? Garbage. They were disenfranchised, right? Their votes literally don't count because they can't do the primary again. If a bunch of people go in and vote for Trump right now, and then they say, sorry, you got to get off the ballot, those votes go into the garbage and they're done. There's no alternative. Their votes just go into the trash. Now, with the earliest primaries approaching, in just a few months, the states say this court should not let the uncertainty persist. Any damage may already have been done by the time another case raising similar issues makes its way to this court. And the longer litigation over a national candidate's eligibility persists, the more uncertainty and confusion will spread. Voters need an answer in time to judiciously weigh the merits of the competing candidates before casting their ballots, not after the voting has begun. An authoritative answer from this court, they say, is needed to prevent the situation from deteriorating any further. With some plaintiffs having succeeded in their challenge to Trump, more litigation is going to follow. It's that domino effect. Suppose plaintiffs in 5 states, for example, they sue to enjoin their respective secretaries from placing Trump on the ballot just before the primaries are held on Super Tuesday. Perhaps 3 succeed in their injunction. Now, appeals from both sides are going to take time. And while the litigation continues, voters will not know whether former President Trump will ultimately be disqualified in their states or others. And that will undoubtedly impact how voters cast their ballots. You might go in and say, I think Trump's going to be thrown off the ballot. So why don't I vote for Nikki Haley? Or whatever they, rig there. So that could be a situation. Now, perhaps some would have chosen a different candidate had they known their preferred candidate had a reduced chance or even no chance at the nomination. And the way things played out below is an example of how damaging state court by state court idiosyncrasies can be. With extremely limited discovery, rapid proceedings that nevertheless blew past statutory deadlines, loose evidentiary standards, no jury, and more, a state court knocked former President Trump off the ballot, applying mushy definitions, deemed him to have engaged in efforts to literally overthrow the government. Now, as a dissenting judge said, the potential chaos wrought by an imprudent and unconstitutional and a standardless system in which each state gets to adjudicate Section 3 on an ad hoc basis seems antithetical to the framers' intent, obviously. Now, for elections to be fair, say the states, voters need a single, certain answer to whether someone is ineligible for president under the 14th. Now, if left to the court of the 50 states, litigation over a candidate's eligibility for president will absolutely result in conflicting rulings and delayed transition of power when it comes apart. So swift intervention from this court is critical. The states continue, saying the decision below in Colorado has consequences beyond just the next election. Like, we know you're all freaked out about Trump, but think about what you're doing to this country. By wielding a political provision of the 14th Amendment without congressional authorization, the court below sacrificed the political stability of the system, of a nation with profound consequences for all of us. Now, at minimum, it has exposed the political life to perhaps years, if not months, of chaos. And maybe that's what they want by design. You know, I have some thoughts that maybe they are trying to instigate something. You know, they want somebody to do something bad. We're going to take Trump off the ballot so somebody will do something, and they can, or the FBI will cause something, and then they'll blame somebody to do it. You know, they blame that. And then that causes a spiral. Now, the lower court's decision expresses lack of respect due to Congress. Constitutionally, Congress has sole authority to remove a president from office. The power to accuse a president of an impeachable offense resides solely with the House, and they already impeached him. And while the power to remove a president resides solely in the Senate, and they acquitted him, Congress vigorously applied these powers to former President Trump. Now, as the House impeached him twice and acquitted him both times, even when political opponents accused him of fomenting an insurrection, much as the lower courts held here. So Colorado has effectively rendered its judgment that Congress was wrong during the impeachment proceedings. They acquitted him, and they said, no, you guys are idiots. And they're right, they are idiots there. But it's Congress, and they have the final say. So the decision below throws confusion into the executive branch's activities too. First, they say, let's dump into the past. If the Colorado decision is correct, then some have argued that former President Trump would be immediately disqualified the moment he purportedly engaged in the insurrection. Now, under that view, the actions that Trump, so in other words, if it is automatically self-executing, right? If everybody just decides that, there was an insurrection, Congress doesn't need to act. There's just, people like Crazy Eyes Griswold and Shenna Bellows, and they just decide, that's an insurrection because we saw it, we decided it, and so we make some motions. If that happens, then they say literally on January 6th, Trump was an insurrectionist, he's disqualified from the presidency, you're done, because we don't need any process, it's automatic. Under this view, the actions that Trump took between January 7th and January 20th, including the pardons he issued and other bills he signed into law, would not be constitutionally valid, they say. That's somebody's argument, apparently. Now, thanks to Colorado, then, some might now try to say that America was without a president for 2 full weeks under that standard. And they say, second, the future. If state courts start declaring persons insurrectionists, like Joe Biden is for having our country being invaded every single day, then it could spawn questions about whether the double jeopardy clause would prevent the government from levying a second punishment against any of those persons for the same events. Jefferson Davis, for example, he argued exactly that, and the issue was never finally resolved. So decisions like Colorado significantly complicate criminal prosecutions. That's not to suggest that any given prosecution is warranted, but the potential impairment does illustrate just how far-reaching the consequences of this decision are. And if the lid is truly off Pandora's box and we can just charge anybody for insurrection no matter what, and state courts can freely disqualify past and present presidents, then it's not hard to conceive of even more troubling outcomes. For instance, could a state court disqualify a sitting president for running for re-election by construing a serious misstep taken during a time of war as an action that has given aid and comfort to the enemies? Maybe. Yeah, I mean, maybe Joe Biden right now is giving aid and comfort to America's enemies. We don't know who's coming across that border. There's a lot of people many people are on the terrorist watch list. Are those enemies of America? Well, then why are they allowed to come across every single day? He's giving aid and comfort to them. Maybe he should be indicted and disqualified right now. The court should act now to stop all these strange and far-reaching results. It should grant the petition, end the uncertainty, that is sure to follow. They also say, return the power to Congress, take it away from these lefty Democrats in Colorado and people like Griswold and Bellows, saying, putting aside the serious practical consequences of what they've done, this decision also strikes a serious blow to the Constitution's separation of powers. Only Congress can disqualify a presidential candidate. The 14th Amendment says what we've read here many times. And we've read that. And it says here, the 14th Amendment charges Congress with deciding how the Insurrection Clause will be enforced, saying just months after the 14th Amendment was even passed and ratified, Chief Justice Chase, while riding circuit in Virginia, reached that very conclusion, saying that constitutional provisions that show disqualifications of a president should not be resolved by the courts. Now, although Colorado refused to engage with that reasoning, it rejected it and said, well, we're going to engage because we hate Trump. But the Colorado court should have read it again. Examining the text, it's pretty clear. Chief Justice in Griffin, he explained, the 14th Amendment, 5th section, qualifies the 3rd. Section 5, and this was written right after it was ratified, Section 5 qualifies the 3rd, and Section 5 gives to Congress, quote, absolute control of the whole operation. So the 3rd goes to Congress via the 5th. Now they say that's bad statutory interpretation. They say no, every single element, all of the subsections of the 14th Amendment, 1 through 5, we've been talking about 3, but they say, well, the other ones, they're all read independently, and these others are self-executing, and so we don't have to, so we can just say that this is self-executing too. They say practical considerations, Chief Justice Chase explained, very clearly underscored the need for the legislation. To give effect to Section 3, he said, it must be ascertained what particular individuals are subject to a disability, but only Congress may provide the proceedings, the evidence, the decisions, the enforceability required to ascertain who meets the definition. No wonder then, say the states, that Congress at one point did pass and then later repealed enabling legislation. Congress, like Chief Justice Chase and those who pushed the 14th Amendment, they recognize that this portion of the Constitution, and they wrote this, provides no means for enforcing itself. And so they tried to add to it. In requiring that 2/3 of each house agree to remove the disability, the 14th Amendment also aligns with the standards under the 25th Amendment. Under that amendment, if the VP and certain officers think the president is unable to perform his duties, then they can do this. Now, Congress shall decide the issue by 2/3 vote, and the president shall resume his duties. An unable president is one who lacks the ability or the legal qualifications to discharge his office. So they say, again, it's very consistent. The 25th Amendment, by the extension of the 14th, gives Congress the ability to decide who is allowed to serve. Now, the voters first will decide whether former President Trump is legally qualified to be re-elected. Voters, arguments concerning qualifications or the lack thereof can be laid before the public before the election, as they already have been. Saying if the voters find themselves that President Trump is qualified and Congress concurs, then the Constitution does not contemplate a time for the judges here to second guess that call. Voters and Congress, that's it. Rather, the Constitution gives Congress the sole and final authority to make this determination, and they did. The court below concluded that Section 3 is self-executing. They focused on things that have been said about other aspects of the 14th Amendment or other amendments entirely, and they ignored many of the cases that say the 14th Amendment is not self-executing, and they list them here. And anyway, despite all of that evidence that they ignored, courts need to examine each specific constitutional provision on its own merits to decide whether it's self-executing, not just lump the provisions together, dumping them all into one additional situation. They continue saying, the court should grant the petition to erase a standardless political judgment about what constitutes insurrection. saying without more direction from Congress about what it means to, quote, engage in an insurrection, for instance, a declaration that participating in what happened on J6 would constitute the kind of event, the Colorado court had no warrant to act here. Saying Section 3 doesn't give us any guidance. It applies to persons who engage in insurrection, but what does that mean? Evaluating whether someone has given inappropriate or actionable aid and whether an insurrection occurred is the kind of question Trump answered in war and diplomacy. The decision below from Colorado, they say offered a vague understanding of insurrection. They just said it was a concerted and public use of force or threat of force to hinder or prevent the U.S. government from taking actions to accomplish, there it is, the peaceful transfer of power. See how broad that definition was until they narrowed it down? Like you could apply it to anybody. So in other words, they just picked something that Trump did and then they applied the definition of insurrection to him. Like, why is it peaceful transfer of power explicitly? Why would this also not be, I don't know, could you insurrect the White House by just attacking it, for example? Now, the definition spawns more questions than answers. What constitutes a threat? Good question. Is a mere assemblage of people shouting, is that a threat of force? I don't know. What actions are necessary to peacefully transfer power? I don't know. If two people link arms across a sidewalk to block a poll worker from entering a ballot counting site, is that hindering the transfer enough to constitute an insurrection? Does incendiary political rhetoric at a rally become insurrection if the winning party deems that rhetoric insufficiently supportive of the new regime? Have protesters hindered and prevented the execution of the United States? All of these things. If their activities prompt the Secret Service to temporarily lock down the White House so that the president is moved to a bunker, is that insurrection? Because that's what happened to Trump during the George Floyd protests. They say, in truth, an insurrection is much more serious than anything that they suppose. Where the Constitution uses the term insurrection, that term is like invasion. It's like rebellion. Says the president and the militia can execute the laws against suppressing insurrections and repelling invasions. It's much more than a 4-hour riot where nobody brought guns. Early authorities also describe this as well. On the spectrum of civil disturbance, Blackstone, he places insurrection closer to a foreign invasion than to a riot. So it's a spectrum. Gives us a bunch of examples here. Says, and during the Constitutional Convention debates, James Wilson also noted that the major reason for the Republican form of government clause was to prevent dangerous commotions, insurrections, and rebellions. And early Congress took similar view. Section 1 of the 1792 and 1795 Militia Acts, they say that the president can use a militia to repel a foreign invasion or an insurrection if the state asks for help. Judges and others during the Civil War, they also treated insurrection and rebellion and invasion on the same plane. So it's much broader. They define insurrection during the Reconstruction era as a rebellion. A rebellion primarily meant taking up arms traitorously against the government, right? And first of all, there was no arms there. I mean, they had some flagpoles to take over the country, and they weren't doing it traitorously. They were doing it to save America against a rigged election that, in my opinion, the FBI was behind, the same people who investigated this. Now, in the 14th Amendment floor debates, they also said that this was analogous to domestic war, okay? Because we had just gotten out of a civil war, not a 4-hour riot. Indeed, throughout the early 19th century, rebellion and insurrection were often deemed synonymous, so it's a much higher standard. The states say these descriptions are consistent with 4 of the insurrections that happened back during the Civil War: Shays Rebellion, Whiskey Rebellion, Fry's Rebellion, and Dorr's Rebellion. These insurrection rebellions lasted several months. They involved extended violence. It shut down the courts. It shut down revenue collection in local areas. It targeted local officials. It involved militarily arrayed participants, and it saw either combat of the election or the election of a literal rival government. Okay? Not grannies walking around the Capitol like, this is crazy, and Capitol Police tapping them on the shoulder so that they let them in. All were far more serious than anything that happened here. Now, although it's clear enough that the lower court's definition is the wrong one, and that's not to say that the court would be equipped to provide the right one, they say it's not entirely clear what the definition is. And the Colorado court oddly concluded that it could define insurrection just because other modern day courts have also found similar things, found the definition, and they say we can define it. Now, they say this is a rough and ready form of constitutional construction. They just made it up, and the court should not endorse this behavior. Saying the Constitution provides the solution to the chaos we see now. It specifies that a politically accountable body, like Congress, should publicly declare whether an ongoing disturbance constitutes an insurrection. Across the board, the Constitution entrusts Congress to decide these decisions, and using legislative and political processes to decide this is familiar with the 14th Amendment. We've already done this in American history, and the framers of the 14th Amendment knew that. The president issued many proclamations during the Civil War, declaring it to be an insurrection against the United States. Andrew Johnson saying we have to end the insurrection. In 1861, for example, Congress authorized a proclamation to be issued. Congress said that. Said when insurgents failed to disperse by the time directed by the president, and the insurgents claimed to be acting under state authority, that's it. Act of July 13th. No one therefore had to guess whether the Civil War was an insurrection. An authoritative public process for proclaiming it an insurrection gave us the answer. But Congress did not exercise any of those powers when it came to January 6th. Why not? Beyond the Civil War, Congress has not endeavored to define what constitutes an insurrection at all. Now, if Congress or the president were to authoritatively give persons notice that continuing to take part in a widespread disturbance constitutes insurrection, like they did during the Civil War, then courts would have a standard to apply. But they don't. Without a proclamation, the Colorado Supreme Court, they just decided on their own. And they are ill-equipped to second-guess the judgments of politicians, soldiers, and diplomats about how to label these conflicts. But when it comes to the events of J6, the Colorado court simply had no legal standard to apply. And so therefore, the court should grant the petition. And we have breaking news here. They did grant the petition. So this is going forward into the Supreme Court. The 27 states are successful, along with Donald Trump and Colorado attorneys, in getting the Supreme Court to accept the filings. And let's take a look at the court docket to see what it looks like fresh out of the oven here. That is the District of Columbia case. Let's check this one. This is the Supreme Court docket. Donald Trump versus the Anderson litigants. January 3rd, the petition for a writ of certiorari was filed. Letter from the Colorado Republicans. A brief from the Anderson litigants. And now we get the petition. Is granted. On January 5th, the case is set for oral arguments on February 8th, 2024. So that means that the ballots are going to be printed. Trump's name will be on them. We'll have oral arguments before Super Tuesday. Maybe we'll get a decision before Super Tuesday, which would be in March. So petitioner's brief on the merits, which is Trump, and any amicus curiae briefs in support are to be filed before Thursday, January 18th, which we've already read through this one from the 27 states. There's also the Republican National Committee, the RNC, also submitted an amicus. The National Republican Congressional Committee, the NRCC, also submitted a petition. And so those will be considered. Now, respondents' briefs from the Anderson litigants and any amicus curiae on theirs are now coming in by January 31st. So the reply brief, if any, which Trump will do, will come in Monday before Monday, February 5th, 2024. And so, my friends, mark your calendars. Thursday, February 8th, Supreme Court oral arguments. We are going to be here covering it, and it's going to be very interesting to see what that sounds like and what happens inside. So great news for Trump, for the 27 states, for the people who, want to vote for their candidates in their states. My gosh, what is happening to the country, by the way? This is very good news. And so Supreme Court accepting that. We'll be here continuing to cover this. People like Jamie Raskin are going to be very upset about this news. He says Trump is clearly an insurrectionist, and anybody who supports him is also an insurrectionist, and he calls them cultish followers. They haven't even recanted their claim about what happened in 2020. And so listen to him. They're doing their insurrection party with their stupid signs. Democracy's on the line. This was a clip that was caught from a stream, and so it is a little bit potato quality, but here is Raskin.
Pittsburgh Post was formerly from the post-scandal insurrection.
Yeah.
The reason I asked is Pennsylvania is one of only 2 states that House Republicans tried to overturn the election results and tried to get the Supreme Court to fill out the thing. I'm a resident of Pennsylvania. Am I going to be worried about another type of insurrection? Again, stop the steal, the hidden votes, that the threats against all about it. Threats against election workers. Should I be worried about that?
Well, the reason that...
So the question is, are they going to do all this again? I mean, there's a bunch of, stop the steal and all this stuff. Like, what if they just do it again? Trump's an insurrectionist back then. He's going to steal it again, isn't he?
That I'm so thrilled and excited about the assembly of so many great civil society groups here today is because people understand that the people's election is actually threatened again by Donald Trump and his cultish followers. They have never recanted their claim that Donald Trump actually won in 2020. He's running around the country saying he's going to pardon the January 6th insurrectionists who are in jail, even though the other half of the time they're saying that they're actually Antifa fighters and FBI agents.
Well,
which
there
would
were.
make it hard to understand why.
There were. Even Ray Epps, who many people have a lot of questions about, says there was Antifa there. Okay, everybody says there was Antifa.
Why they're protesting for their removal, and Donald Trump is saying he's going to pardon them. But in any event, there's no logic over there in the land of conspiracy theory. So yes,
conspiracy theory. Did the 51 CIA ex and CIA people, was that a true story or not? I think it was a true story. Was the FBI censoring and sending censorship requests to the social media companies and leveraging them to censor us during the election? Yes, they were. Were secretaries of states, just like what we're seeing now, okay, the same thing that we're seeing now with secretaries of states being sued by private parties. It's like deja vu. We covered all of this back in 2020. In 2019, really. Mark Elias and Democracy Docket were the guys behind it that time. Made their name there. Did that happen? Did they move things around using muck COVID? Of course they did. It was nonstop. So it's all true. It's not a conspiracy theory. We know it. He knows it. Now they're having to fake a story as a cover-up.
We have to defend the election at every level, at the precinct level, where Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss defended the election.
Yeah.
We've got to defend it at the state level, where Brad Raffensperger, at least last time, did the right thing. We're going to have to defend it on January 6th. Again, where Vice President Pence withstood incredible pressure to step outside of his constitutional role and just declare Donald Trump the winner. We're going to have to try to mobilize on a cross-partisan basis everybody who supports constitutional democracy to defend the Constitution.
Okay, so we got to rig it at every level. Rig it at the state level, rig it at this level, rig it at this level, rig it at this level. Okay, it's nonstop. And I think that's one of the Capitol Hill police officers back there, wasn't it? So they're all just on their little propaganda tour, little parade. We got the precinct levels. We got the people in Georgia, okay, top to bottom. And as we talked about yesterday, okay, Trump might win at the Supreme Court. Like SCOTUS might tell Crazy Eyes Griswold, hey, stop being so crazy. She might tell Shenna Bellows, hey, stop, doing your psychopath stuff. But they're still going to be the secretaries of state. They're still going to be there governing the mechanics of the election, just like Raskin wants, from top to bottom. And do you think that anything in their emails or anything in how they execute the elections is going to go in favor of Trump? Obviously not. They have shown us their cards. They've shown us who they are. So how can we trust the results that they're going to operate an election fairly? Obviously we can't. There's going to be questions. This election is going to be very troubling. Everybody, no matter what happens, is going to claim that it was rigged. and it might very well may be. So we'll be here continuing to cover this. Great news coming in there, fresh out of the oven. The states submitted their demand that this be reversed. Colorado Supreme Court is now going to be measured by the United States Supreme Court, and we're looking forward to covering that. So my friends, we'll be here continuing to do so. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing to our channel and sharing this with a friend or family member. We've also got our website, robertgovea.com. Links are in the description. You can sign up there for our newsletter. You can also get all the PDFs there if you want to take a look at the red lines on everything we just went through. That is where you can go. We've also got our Watcher Lodge, where we have a lot of fun stuff cooking, including our fitness challenge. The last day to sign up is January 5th. Head on over to watcherlodge.com if you want to participate, and we'll look forward to seeing you there and back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, let's jump in to this, and this is just perfect. I'm glad that the Supreme Court, thank you, Supreme Court, for issuing the petition before I got to the, granting it before I got to this segment. It's going to make this segment much better. I was hoping they'd do that. Perfect. All right, let's get to it. The Supreme Court has now accepted Donald Trump's petition to challenge the Colorado ballot removal case in their courtroom to settle this once and for all for the entire nation. But something that is happening is the Supreme Court is under attack. In particular, Clarence Thomas, House Democrats say he's got to go. Now that we've got 9 judges who are going to be weighing this case, be very useful for the left if they could take out somebody who's on the right. Make this a 4-4 decision. Maybe they'll get squishy John Roberts to join over here, and we can just flop a position where it's a split on the court. So the 3 lefties plus Roberts. And then we have the rest of the judges on the conservative right, all kind of hanging out. It's going to be a curious little battle, but people like Dan Goldman, AOC, Guam's going to capsize guy, all are saying that Thomas must recuse himself. And so let's see who wrote this filing here. You can see January 4th from Congress of the United States. They write this over to the honorable, very honorable Clarence Thomas. Normally I scoff at that phrase when we're talking about Congress, but not with Clarence. He's the man. They say here, Clarence, now that you're going to be considering this Trump case, we don't think you should be on the court. Please recuse yourself from us. They say, Dear Justice Thomas, on December 15th, and let's find out who wrote this, by the way. Who are the people who signed off on this? Okay, Madeline Dean, Glenn Ivey, Gerald Connolly, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We've got Melanie Stansbury, Jasmine Crockett, you know her, and of course, Dan Goldman, loser. So all these people sign off on this thing, and guess who is the original author of this? Henry Hank Johnson Jr. And I know that you probably don't know everybody on this list, but you certainly know Hank Johnson because he's the Guam Capsize guy. And he is the person who is signing off on this top line. Now, just before we get into the filing, you can see we've got 3 pages of goodness to get to. Who is Hank Johnson, you might be wondering, for those of you who not remember this clip? Well, Hank Johnson is Mr. Capsize Man.
Anderson Cooper.
Mr. Capsize Man. And about 13 years ago, Hank Johnson was still in Congress. And Anderson Cooper had an interesting comment about something that happened with our friend Hank. Here's what we have.
Things happen in Planet Washington. I actually thought this was kind of an April Fool's joke when I saw it today, but it's not. It took place last week in a House Armed Services Committee hearing discussing a military buildup on the island of Guam.
13 years ago.
Here's Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson. Listen.
This is a island that at its widest level is, 12 miles from shore to shore, and at its smallest level, or smallest location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
It's like
a
12
small
here,
island and about 24
7
miles, if I recall,
12,
long.
7, 24.
So 24 miles long, about 7 miles wide at the
7 here.
least widest
12 here.
place on the island, and about 12 miles wide on the widest part of the
Anderson's
island.
working hard over there.
And I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure
it's like
with me,
12.
sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that
Coop's got the map.
whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that.
I got to say, I'm impressed with the Admiral Robert Willard, who's head of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, for not laughing, frankly. Later, when he was asked for a clarification, a spokesman for the Congressman Johnson said he meant that adding about 8,000 Marines and their families to the population of Guam could be a tipping point to the island's infrastructure and ecosystem, that he was, quote, obviously joking. You can decide for yourself.
Obviously joking. Obviously. You know, not a capsize. It's just a tipping point. Oh, Hank. He wasn't joking, not even a little bit, okay? He thought the whole dang island was going to flip over. Okay, so he's been in Congress. That was 13 years ago. He's still around. I don't know if he knows more about islands or anything, but he's the author of this letter. All right, so he says, all right, dear Justice Thomas, on December 15th, we wrote imploring you that you recuse yourself from any participation in the case of Donald Trump. Why? Given your wife's intimate involvement in Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the election and to obstruct its certification. And this week, Judge, we're compelled to write to you again. And this time, we must urge you again to recuse yourself from the case of Anderson versus Griswold, because your impartiality is reasonably questioned by substantial numbers of fair-minded members of the public who believe that your wife, Virginia, aka Ginny, and her substantial involvement in the events leading up to J6 and the financial incentive it presents to your household if Trump is reelected are disqualifying. Now, as we noted in our last letter, the Supreme Court has announced a formal code of conduct. And you said that a justice should disqualify himself when their impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Now, the code details where you should boot yourself, and he cites the code. So what's interesting about this is, remember, the left they were essentially beating up Judge Thomas for saying that his wife was hanging out with cool people who were absolutely right about the election, which makes him more qualified, not less. Anyways, point is, they said, you guys need a standard of ethics. And so the Supreme Court said, okay, leave us alone. Here's our ethics. And they said, aha, thank you for those. Now you're violating your own ethics, which is why you don't play with these people. When summoned to testify before the House J6 committee, your wife told the committee that she did go to the Stop the Steal rally. Shout out to Mrs. Ginny Thomas, where Trump ginned up. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they are using that intentionally. Where Trump ginned up the attendees, right? So it's Ginny was there being ginned up. It's probably intentional. The attendees into a mob, which he then dispatched into the Capitol to, quote, fight like hell. Where he also said, is there peacefully and patriotically in here? Nope, not in there. The January 6th rally then morphed into an attack after they denied the National Guard and after the House Sergeant at Arms ignored Capitol Hill Chief of Police Stephen Sund's phone call for many hours. Then Colorado court found him to have caused an insurrection, and that disqualifies Trump. Now, not only did your wife attend the J6 rally, but she was instrumental in planning it and bringing the insurrectionists to the Capitol. Your wife was one of 9 board members for a conservative political group called Stop the Steal, a movement which culminated in the January 6th attack. Is that right? They're responsible for it, then why are they prosecuting Trump? It's unthinkable that you could be impartial, Judge Thomas, when deciding an event that your wife personally organized qualifies as an insurrection. And further, your wife of 36 years, Miss Thomas, it's Miss Thomas now, it's not Ginny. Ginny Okay, well, they went back to Miss Thomas. She has shown a fervent bias in favor of Mr. Trump. She's awesome, totally. And it's hard to believe that her bias has no impact on you, which is why reasonable people of relevant facts say that you cannot fairly discharge your duties. Miss Thomas urged Trump's chief of staff to pursue unrelenting efforts to, he says, overturn the election. I'd say enforce it, ending only days after the attack on the Capitol. She also signed a letter urging Kevin McCarthy, who's useless. And, speaking of Kevin, is he behind this exit of these Republicans? Apparently, more and more Republicans are resigning. He started it. And my question, of course, is he encouraging it so that the Republicans lose the House because he's so stinking spiteful? Representatives Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, they said she wanted them to remove them. Now, she was a witness for Congress at the January 6th committee due to her intimate involvement, and they say that committee's report is integral. So in other words, she testified in the January 6th committee, and the January 6th committee was incorporated by Colorado, even though it's hearsay and it's multiple layers removed. They included it. They say, oh, because she testified there. And by the way, they interviewed basically everybody. They say, now that case is before you, and so she's got to go. In her testimony to the committee, she said she still believes the 2020 election has been stolen. Shout out to her, man. Solid. There is no evidence that her views have softened. Good. Good. Should have hardened, actually. And it is unreasonable to conclude that your wife's fervent views do not bleed over to your opinions, and they affect your ability to be impartial. And finally, it's foreseeable that your wife's earning capacity will also be positively impacted by this. From the little that is public about her for-profit firm called Liberty Consulting, it is clearly aligned with Trump's interests. Well, she's a conservative. Liberty Consulting's few known clients include FedUp, Center for Security Policy, and the value of her consulting firm skyrocketed from up to $15,000 to up to $100,000 during his presidency, and then fell again after he lost the White House, is what they say. Now, that is a reference to a CNBC article. They say Ms. Thomas and her professional and financial interests are so aligned with Trump that if he gets reelected, she's going to make more money. Now, your wife's income benefits your household, and therefore your family and you personally, Clarence, you have a financial stake in this outcome, which disqualifies you from any involvement in it. Fewer than half of all Americans trust SCOTUS. That number is going to fall even lower if you rule in this case, they say. A judge should not sit in judgment of his own wife's behavior, nor in judgment of their fortunes. And yet that's exactly what's happening here. And so to protect this court, you must recuse yourself. Signed by Hank Johnson, Mr. Capsize, Guam. So you can see what's happening here, right? It's a full-on attack. I do not think that Judge Thomas should or will recuse himself. Obviously, I think that this is something that is being used as a political attack against him, obviously. And it's signed by Hank Johnson. Now, obviously, this is a very racist letter, by the way, because this is just clearly racist. Now, I think they're trying to mitigate the racism of the language by having Hank Johnson be the primary signature of this, Like, for example, they didn't have Dan Goldman sign that. That's interesting. Probably to rebut some of that racist stuff. But anyways, still very racist. I mean, how dare they say something like this against Clarence Thomas? It is reprehensible. He is an honorable man, and we're looking forward to the court not recusing him off of the case. But here's Dan Goldman and other lefties. They're reacting to this. This is part of the long plan to try to marginalize the Supreme Court, to try to keep Trump off the ballot. If they can start to whittle away at their power, maybe they'll get their way.
Signed that letter along with Congressman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Hank Johnson, I think the principal author of it, and a few other members of the House. It seems very clear, as strong a case of recusal as one could imagine.
Well, it is a strong case. It's even
You mean like Judge Chutkan's recusal?
stronger because Clarence Thomas has already recused himself from a January 6th case. You'll remember there was an uproar when it came out about his wife's role in the January 6th case, and the fact that he had not recused himself from an earlier Supreme Court case related to turning over text messages from Mark Meadows, I believe, to the January 6th committee. After that uproar, after it was revealed the extent of which his wife was involved, he then did recuse himself in a case that went up to the court about John Eastman's communications related to January 6th. So it's not only that this is an open and shut case of an appearance of a conflict of interest, if not an actual conflict of interest, but it is precedent that he has set himself. And so if he now does not recuse from this case,
see what happens?
He will clearly be picking and choosing which cases related to January 6th he wants to rule on and which he doesn't think are sufficiently important for him to insist on ruling upon. And it just underscores how important it is for the Supreme Court, and if the Supreme Court does not do it, for Congress itself to implement new ethics rules on the Supreme Court so that it is not just up to Clarence Thomas to make this decision himself.
Okay, so they're going to attack the court, attack the court, attack the court. Every time you give these people an inch, they take a mile, which is why you can't give them anything. So Judge Thomas recused himself on a prior case, and now they say he's got to recuse himself on all the cases. And that was the John Eastman case. Now it's the Trump case. Now it's on a national issue, a national election. They're trying to marginalize the court so that they can win, because they are cheaters and bullies. That's the only way they can win. They cannot win when they battle ideas, which is why they censor everybody and try to silence you from participating even in the election. So House Dems attack Clarence Thomas. We're going to be here defending him and defending this process because they're trying to steal an election right in front of our eyes. We're not going to let that happen. So thank you for subscribing, my friends. Thanks for sharing this show with a friend or family member, inviting them to come and join us. And don't forget to check out robertgovea.com. We've got a daily newsletter there. We have a lot of good stuff happening along with our shop there. So check that out as well. Great way to support our work. Thanks for being here, my friends. We'll see you on the next one. All right. And last segment of the day. Let's see what's happening with insurrection fever, which is all over the country right now. Harry Dunn, this goofy Capitol Hill police officer, launched this bizarre video since he's now running for Congress. He wrote a book, went around, hung out with Inside Jen Psaki, selling copies to a bunch of whacked out Democrats, and now he's going to be their representative in Congress. He's going to lead them against insurrection across America because of his historic actions on January 6th. But were they actually historic or were they not? Actually, TPC4 USA is an account on X run by Steve Baker. Great account. He is going to walk us through this image of Mr. Dunn, Capitol Hill officer, former, running around the Capitol like a lunatic and dropping off his magazine from out of his rifle. It just falls out. He is a bit troubled, in my opinion, and he's now running for Congress, which might be the perfect place for him. But this is one of the most bizarre campaign videos I think we've ever seen. Apparently, this guy, who apparently was there, suffered PTSD from the consequences of January 6th. Had to get counseling, had to get all sorts of treatment, whatever. Now he is recreating it. He posted this today. On January 6th, I defended our democracy from insurrectionists as a Capitol police officer. After President Biden honored me with the Presidential Citizens Medal for Congress to stop Trump's MAGA extremists to ensure it never happens again. All right. Well, we're going to listen to this. Stick with me because we're going to go into Steve Baker's analysis on this, and it's excellent. So this is what it looks like when you're a former Capitol Hill police officer who had a little bit of a mental breakdown and needed to be consoled by your fellow Capitol Hill police. This is what it looks like when you decide, I can lead America.
On this day, my role was as a Capitol police officer. I'm Harry Dunn, and that meant putting aside who I am, a father, a Marylander, a Democrat, because I swore an oath to protect our Constitution, to protect our democracy. It's what allowed me to protect some members of Congress who I knew were bigots.
What? Okay. So he suffered PTSD from being there on January 6th. And now he's recreating this. This is all fake. And he's walking around in like a Zelensky outfit or something. While they have a bunch of actors taking the walls apart, which is our whole argument. Okay, that a lot of this was fake. It was Antifa. It was undercover cops flashing their badges to other undercover cops, all with MAGA hat and MAGA gear on. There's video footage of it all over the internet of undercover cops in MAGA gear. Okay, so yeah, it's fake. It's a bunch of propagandized garbage. And they just recreated the whole thing for somebody apparently who has PTSD, who doesn't want to relive any of this. And he's reliving it. And so I don't know. I don't know if they got the same director that Liz Cheney had. Remember, Liz Cheney hired a director to produce the Capitol Hill garbage in her fake little committee hearing, all TV producer, and they spliced in audio and they, rigged all the footage. Don't know if it was that guy. I don't know if they called the FBI agents who were there on the scene and brought them back. Like, is this Homeland Security over here? Is this the guy that picked up Enrique Tarrio from jail, who was an FBI informant called Kenny Lazario? Was that them? Anyways, here it goes.
Who helped fan the flames that started all of this. I put country above self. The problem is, a lot of them didn't. Some of the same people who stood behind us when we protected them went back on the floor of Congress and stood behind Trump. They voted to acquit him. And worst of all, they denied the violence and trauma that led to the death of some of my fellow officers.
Who? Who died? Are you talking about Brian Sicknick, who died of natural causes? Confirmed by the Capitol Hill Police, your former agency? Are you talking about the other Capitol Police officers who unfortunately died by suicide for some reason? You blaming Trump for that? Or do you want to look into those cases? Who are you talking about? Because no officers died that I know of on January 6th. Not a single one. And this is a stupid lie. That is a damned lie that Merrick Garland and many people keep repeating. Brian Sicknick died of natural causes by the Capitol Hill Police's own admission. It's still on their website. You can look it up, Harry.
I couldn't stand by and watch. I had another role to play. I used my voice to speak out, to get into good trouble. And a few weeks ago, I left the force after more than 15 years of service, so that today I can announce I'm running for Congress. We can't ever let this happen again. And you've heard it from Trump himself. He is hell-bent on finishing what he started this day.
Okay, stick with me. Steve Baker's going to blast this guy.
I'm stepping into a new role today, but I can't do it alone. I believe every one of us has a role to play in this fight. So join me. We've got a democracy to protect.
An Adwell production, Harry Dunn for Congress, running as Democrat, paid for by Harry Dunn for Congress, filmed in Maryland. Okay, so the whole thing was fake, just a total propaganda piece. I mean, this guy is like really milking this thing for everything he's got. But what's so interesting is a lot of this is just fake nonsense, okay? We're going to hear him explain a little bit more about this. But first, let me take you over to Steve Baker. Steve Baker has been doing awesome work on this case, and we have been following his work for quite some time. I really recommend that you give him a follow. Steve Baker, let me pull up his account because he was the person who was actually interviewed who did that. He does do some work over from The Blaze, and on The Blaze, they put together this beautiful report. So I'm going to encourage you to really watch all of it. But I want to share with you what Steve Baker has been saying today in response to this congressional announcement. And let's pull this up. He says, you know, everyone is all a Twitter. This is Steve Baker at TPC4 USA. He says, everybody is all a Twitter about former Capitol Hill police officer Dunn's announcement. Now, here's a quick primer for you, including links that you can share with anybody that you want. He says the first thing everyone needs to know about the Blaze series, and I'm going to play a short clip of it here in a minute, but I encourage you to go watch it. Everything that you need to know is that we're not even close to being done with this dude. We've already shown that his N-word claims, okay, he said I was being called the N-word all over the place, which made a media darling, that made him a media darling, never happened. We revealed the 180-degree turnabout between the two FBI interviews he gave about his interaction with 4 Oath Keepers, many of whom are rotting in prison right now. We've shown irrefutably from the video and the trial transcript evidence as well that both Dunn and Special Agent Lazarus, who not only contradicted each other in court testimony, in other words, one of them lied, but, how about neither of them told the truth? Because under oath, they claimed that what they claimed happened couldn't have happened because they were at the same location at the same time or something, and they were not there. They've also shown from the Blaze that Dunn has anger issues, which we'll see in the clip. His behaviors at the Capitol on J6 caused higher-ranking officers to intervene. More of that to come. Only a week before Christmas, we revealed the identity of the person who wrote and distributed an anonymous, politically partisan letter on Capitol Police letterhead. Okay, who's that? With the cooperation of Raskin and members of the press pool. Then we looked at the cover-up of the identity of the author and the suppression of his disciplinary report that followed. That author was none other than Officer Harry Dunn, and the Capitol Police cover-up goes straight to the leadership. Wrote and distributed an anonymous, politically partisan letter on Capitol Police letterhead. Raskin helped him. Now, unfortunately for the now congressional candidate Dunn and those who have engaged in the cover-up of his many hidden indiscretions on and off duty, our series on A Day in the Life of Harry Dunn has only just begun. Now, because of the Blaze, they have access to Capitol CCTV video. We've been able to begin the process of uncovering these truths. The rest comes from the natural domino process that's going to follow. One lie leads to another, and here it goes. Now, why my obsession with Harry Dunn? Simple. His lies, given in FBI interviews, given in congressional testimony, and in court, has led to the conviction and the imprisonment of Americans for crimes that they did not commit, period. Here are some links to get you up to speed. And so I am reposting this on my X account at Rob Govea ESQ, or you can go directly to him at TPC4 USA. It's got all of the links there. Everything you need to know. They've been doing incredible work on this. But let me share this little excerpt from their work. And they put this together. It's just outstanding. And I'm not going to jip too much of it because I want you to go over there and watch it. But here is just a little bit of this. And let's do a refresh here because Twitter doesn't like when you scrub through videos like that. I want to play just a couple segments of this and then send you there to watch the rest of it.
Escalating things in his own mind in a way that other officers weren't. I'm not going to try and play psychologist because I'm not one. There's just something wrong with him.
Yeah. Exhibit A.
One of those incidences took place at the top of a stairwell.
This is Steve Baker, the guy behind the report.
Down in the crypt. It's a staircase that leads down to the lower terrace where a lot of officers were receiving first aid for their injuries. He was surrounded by some Metropolitan Police officers when inexplicably he just lost control.
Vice versa. Keep feet.
There was nobody doing any violence of any type in that room at the time. In fact, there was only a very, very small handful of protesters in the crypt at that moment. And they were all the way across the room. And he just started screaming and shouting obscenities across the room. And at that moment, Captain Ben Smith of the United States Capitol Police ran over to him, put his hand on his shoulder. You know, calm down, Harry, calm down. couple of minutes later, Harry broke out in a run towards the staircase that led up to what they call the small rotunda or the speaker's lobby. And as he's running towards those stairs, he accidentally hit the button on his magazine from his M4 automatic weapon. The magazine bounces off the floor. 3 other officers run over. One of them picks it up and hands it to him. Then Harry runs to the top of the stairs. He's clearly agitated. He's in a high level of distress, not because he's been fighting with anyone. When he reached the top of that stairs, that was the moment when Oathkeeper Ken Harrelson saw this highly distressed officer carrying an automatic rifle arrive to the top of the stairs.
Okay, that's him.
Oh.
Inaudible. Yeah, officers are down. Yeah, they're carrying him out on stretchers. They're effing us up, man. But right, he's screaming, right? Screaming at these people.
Already something's going wrong in his head. There wasn't a single officer carried off on a stretcher that day.
Didn't happen. What?
There was another scene that took place in which he describes in the book, not so terribly accurately. He says that he saw a protester who was leaning against the wall. Another police officer had given this protester a bottle of water to wash out his eyes because the protester had been sprayed with pepper spray. The book says that he was screaming obscenities to that protester and yanks the bottle of water out of his hand and then throws it, in his own words, halfway across the rotunda floor. Harry can be seen entering the rotunda. He's not running, but he does inexplicably walk the full length of the floor. He walks over to this lady sitting on a bench. She's wearing red and complete far end of the Capitol, or the rotunda from where he entered. He's screaming at her, and she's doing nothing. And immediately an officer has to come over and intervene and actually takes the lady away from Officer Dunn. Then Dunn walks over to the middle of the rotunda floor where a protester is sitting in the middle. He's not leaning against the wall. He's sitting on the floor. He has 4 or 5 other police officers around him. He does have a full bottle of water in his hand, and inexplicably, Dunn reaches down and violently snatches the bottle of water out of his hands, but he doesn't throw it across the floor. He just then ambles across to the other end of the rotunda and walks over and places the bottle on the pedestal of a statue. Then a higher ranking officer can be seen talking to another member of what they call the M4 unit, points at Dunn, and basically you can see from his hand motion says, "Get him out of here."
Get him out of here.
That officer immediately goes over to Dunn and immediately waves him, grabs him, and gets him out of there. Once again, he was not in a position where he was de-escalating, where he was calm and collected, where he was in control of his own faculties. Officer Dunn, as a personal training officer who teaches de-escalation tactics and procedures, was not following the lessons that he himself taught those who he was in charge of training.
There he is. Drop your gun. Amazing. Okay, so we'll leave it there. There's a bunch more of this, okay? A bunch more. So it's so good. Isn't it good? All right, so go check it out. The Blaze is doing an awesome job on this. They've got some really good footage, and it's just outstanding. So guy is a liar. Guy put stuff in his book that is not true. The guy is, manipulating what happened here. He's running around dropping his magazine out, and he's just totally lost it. Right. And he admits this. He admits that he had PTSD and that he's had, a history of this type of stuff. So they bring him on along with a couple of other psychos who are also responding here. And here, okay, they bring him on. Now, this is like the Capitol Hill Avengers. OK, they brought this guy who's also, I think, has some issues, and they bring them all out here. Now, Harry Dunn, tell us about your troubles and everything that you did to save us all during that time when you were walking around snatching water bottles out.
Gentlemen and 3 heroes we've gotten to know well over the last 3 years. And Officer Dunn, I'll start with you and just get your reflections on where we are 3 years on now. This day, 3 years ago, you thought you had not routine, you had a big rally and a group of people there, but you never could have anticipated what was going to happen. And your life is so different, obviously, since then. What are you feeling as we approach this anniversary?
Good morning, Willie. Morning, guys. Good to see y'all. Good to be here with everybody. man, I never anticipated that my career would take the turn that it has now, and that I am in this space that I am now.
Yeah,
I never
you're friends with Jen
thought that
Psaki
I'd be
now.
on a morning show with the title former Capitol Police Officer attached to it. But, you know, it's a little heartbreaking a little bit. One, for selfish personal reasons, but also for the direction that our country is headed in. I mean, who would have ever thought that, you know, like you said, we thought it was a normal protest that we've dealt with hundreds of times, thousands of times at the Capitol, people expressing their First Amendment right. We never thought, earlier you said, will we debate, is this an insurrection? The definition of an insurrection is a violent uprising against the U.S. government or against a government. And that's exactly what happened that day. So it's important for all of us. And I'm glad that my fellow officers, former officers, are here with me and standing up and pushing back against that narrative that a lot of people on the right are trying to rewrite, erase, or completely just whitewash it.
Hey, man, the video shows opposite of what you wrote in your book. So who's whitewashing the story? The video or you and your book? I think it's the latter. Now, what's also curious about all this, right? Earlier this week, we talked about the new Democrat Spice Girls, okay? It was the 3 former Trump aides who are now all flipped. We had Clavicle Girl, Cassidy Hutchinson. We had Alyssa Griffin, who's on The View, and the other gal. And so, you know, they're concocting these little teams to go out and do this stuff, right? So this is the Capitol Hill Avengers team, right? Made up of these guys. And they just go around every single day. You know how much work it is to get 3 people scheduled together on the same show? Like, this is a lot of work to put all this together all the time. So they just do one show after another, right? They'll just sit around texting, okay, who are we doing next? What are we doing next? Pure propaganda. And this guy just lies through his teeth. He's going to be great in Congress. So, of course, that's happening. Now, we also know in this anniversary that the FBI, which I still don't even know why they exist, honestly, they can't protect the Capitol building and they can't find a pipe bomber after 3 years. Like, one of the most, you know, obvious things that they would supposed to do is to find criminals and secure buildings against attacks, stuff like that, right? They can't even figure it out. They can't do anything. So why are they even here? Who knows? Now, $500,000 reward remains in effect for information about the Capitol Hill pipe bomber, which was their plan B, right? It was their backup plan. So if nothing happened, if Ray Epps couldn't drag everybody into the front door, then they were going to have a pipe bomber who was going to then stop the counting of the electoral ballots and any debate that was taking place that Ted Cruz wanted to initiate, and so on. But it's been 3 years. We got a lot of questions about the FBI. This guy is no Trumper. He's over from CBS. His name is Scott McFarlane, and he's even asking a question. You know, the suspect who left the pipe bomb still hasn't been caught. 3 years later, the Justice Department isn't even taking questions about the investigation. They don't even want to talk about it. What happened? Okay, this is McFarlane News. He's a CBS correspondent, does not like Trump at all. Let's see what he says.
Today, the Department of Justice, marking the 3-year time span since January 6th, talked about its investigation. It is broad, it is unprecedented, and it has had many, many successes. But there's this matter still. The pipe bomb. The pipe bombs placed 3 years ago tomorrow in neighborhoods outside the Republican National Committee and Democratic National Committee.
Plan B,
3 years later, they have not found the person, even though
that's weird.
They have offered a $500,000 reward for information leading to the suspect's capture. And even though the Department of Justice...
Are they going to pay it to themselves at the FBI? They'll just shout down the hall, hey, Lou, they got you. We're going to pay you $500,000 for identifying your friend Bill.
Justice again today said those pipe bombs, quote, could have seriously injured or killed innocent bystanders. And they say, in so many words, the suspect may still be a danger. They're still inviting tips, and 3 years later, they're still not there. In congressional testimony late in 2023,
of course not.
Republican member of Congress, speaking to the former Capitol Police chief, said it is just simply surprising, with all the intelligence, with all the cameras, with all the security and police around Capitol Hill, that they haven't found their person. And today, when speaking to reporters, 3 years later, the Department of Justice just didn't entertain questions.
Don't even want to talk about it.
And even though they did lengthy public interviews 1 year after January 6th,
they know who it is
for the pipe bomber, they haven't done them since. They've rejected a request to do them last year and didn't take those questions today, which leaves open the possibility that after an unprecedented success in the largest investigation in U.S. history, the Department of Justice leaves itself vulnerable to criticisms, buts about this.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Scott. So they lead themselves to a lot of criticism because the whole thing is rigged propaganda. It's not legitimate at all. Of course, they don't want to answer questions. These are the same people that came out and told us that their 6-month sentence for Ray Epps was very serious, while other people are they want 20 years for them for doing conduct that's a lot less than that. So I got 2 more propaganda pieces. I know this is kind of a propaganda heavy piece, but I just got to share it. These people are lunatics. So here is what Joe Biden said. Now he posted this. He says, all of us are being asked right now, what will we do to maintain our democracy? And this is, this language, I know it's Joe Biden. I know we know he can hardly talk. I mean, even listen to this. Listen to him speak here. He can hardly mumble it out. And this is on recording, and this is probably the best take they got. This is the whole stinking campaign.
I've made the preservation of American democracy the central issue of my presidency. I believe in free and fair elections and the right to vote fairly and have your vote counted. There's something dangerous happening in America. There's an extremist movement that does not share the basic beliefs in our democracy. All of us are being asked right now, what will we do to maintain our democracy?
What are you going to do?
History's watching. The world is watching. And most important, our children and grandchildren will hold us responsible. The Vice President and I have supported voting rights since day one of this administration.
He is slurring.
And I ask every American to join me in this cause. America is still a place of possibilities where the power resides with we, the people.
We, the people, want to vote for our candidates, Joe.
That's our soul. We are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together.
Doesn't it sound like he's slurring his words, even in the pre-recorded speech that they edited and probably took 35 takes on? Oh my gosh. All right, so that's what they're doing. Now, it is troubling, right? When a president comes out here and says that essentially half the country is trying to wreck American democracy, it's not policy differences. From the same people that are putting people in prison and prosecuting their political opponents, it is a real serious threat, I think, right? He's actually saying that we are not going to allow political opponents to win. He controls the DOJ. He controls the FBI. They have already been exploiting their power to take out their opponents. So why would they stop? It's only going to get worse. So here is another video. Now, this was shared by our friends on Locals during our members only stream in the morning. And this was wild. I had to do a double take on this because this came out from 11 Films. Now, apparently, it's a pretty big account on X. It's an award-winning pro-democracy production house. So this is what they're producing for their own side. Okay, this is what they watch, I guess, after they're done with The View. Award-winning pro-democracy production house. Democracy is under attack. Let's fight back together. Now, in this little excerpt, again, this is another painful one to listen to because it's so wild, but they use AI to fake Trump's voice, which they admit in the video at the end. They say this is not a movie, even though this whole thing is fake. And they call Trump and his supporters evil. Evil. So what do you do about that? If you're fighting evil demonic forces and you have the FBI, the DOJ, the control of all the levers of government, what do you do to those people? This is what they're talking about on the left.
I love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
Let's get it.
As my first order of business, I hereby declare martial law.
All fake.
Citizens of the new America. Here are today's announcements. Supreme Leader Donald Trump proclaims the 4th of July will no longer be celebrated as Independence Day. In honor of our 2021 Patriots, January 6th will now be recognized as our great nation's birthday.
January 6th.
Citizens are required to participate in quadrant festivities. Failure to do so will be met with harsh punishment and immediate incarceration in your local detention camp.
They're crazy.
I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk.
Effective immediately, all children are now
Trump's kissing babies!
considered spiritual soldiers of MAGA. Regardless of rape, incest, or health of the woman, abortion is now
Oh my
illegal.
gosh.
Anyone caught providing or receiving an abortion will be charged with murder.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment.
So that's going to be a big one. Abortion. They're going to try to get abortion on the ballot all over the place.
Yeah, there has to be some form.
Due to previous liberal indoctrination, all schools are hereby closed. All citizens must participate in their quadrant's book
Republicans don't like education?
Festivity.
Trump doesn't want your kids to get
Will be met
educated?
with harsh punishment and immediate incarceration in your local detention camp. All migrants, refugees, and dreamers are now considered enemies of the new America and will be rounded up, incarcerated, and deported immediately.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. We will root out the radical left thugs that live like vermin. Vermin.
Your curfew and freedom to travel will be determined by your quadrant.
Oh, you're going to have drones
Vermin
attacking you.
surveillance system score. The vermin surveillance system has proven to be invaluable in detecting and squashing liberal uprisings. All citizens must continue to report any progressive or liberal activity. Failure to do so will be met with harsh
Okay, this is not a movie, but it is a movie. Everything that they just shared was totally fake.
punishment and immediate incarceration at your local detention
This is our
camp.
last chance,
Your unwavering loyalty to
and we must unite against evil. This is like their little propaganda pornography, okay? This is what they watch and retweet. Like, they're retweeting this, liking it, leaving comments. We're all gonna die. It's crazy.
Supreme Leader Donald Trump is mandatory and essential in keeping the new America great forever.
Okay, so now you can see this video was funded by the Resistance. They say the video aims to illustrate potential future America and a hypothetical scenario if Trump's reelected. It draws upon his public statements and various other sources to conduct a speculative vision of what might unfold during his tenure. AI audio was used to demonstrate Donald Trump declaring martial law, right? These people are nuts. So that is what they assembled, and the whole thing was fake. And they, now look, I think there is some seriousness to this. Like, it's a joke. These people are lunatics, but this is what they think. And so if they had the option, okay, just like during the pandemic, they said, if you didn't comply with our terms, you don't get health care. You don't get a job. You don't get to travel. You don't get to do anything. Those are the types of dictators, the little types of tyrants who watch this stuff and just enjoy themselves a bit too much. And so if they get the opportunity, if they get the power to make it hurt against the right, they're going to do it. They're throwing Trump off the ballot in order to make it happen. And that's just the beginning. Unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot more of this type of stuff to come. But these people are nuts. Okay, so warning, this video should scare the heck out of you. A lot of people say, help us raise some funds. Here, Brendan says, this is absolutely crap. Nobody should give you a penny if you think this is good. It wasn't any good. Marxist projection, a lot of people responding to that. Pretty funny, almost 1 million views there. So it's just laughable, and it's really kind of insane. You know, it's actually like, you kind of feel bad for some of the people that watch this and go, we're all going to die, because they're living in a reality that is so distorted from the actual reality that you almost feel bad for them. But then you remember, not really. So, of course, we're going to be here continuing to cover this, my friends. I share this stuff with you so you can just see how insane it is. We can all indulge in it together. But this is what is coming out about Dunn. Be sure to follow TPC4 USA and our friends over there at the Blaze, digging into this goofy Capitol Hill police officer launching his campaign. More will be revealed, and we'll be looking forward to covering it. So thank you for subscribing, my friends. Thank you for joining us as we continue our journey here, unpacking all the madness happening out in the world. We'll see you right back here on the next one. All right, my friends. So let's see what you say about all of this. We got the Capitol Hill police officer running for Congress, selling books, House Democrats attacking Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court, and Donald Trump now gets his petition granted after 28 states object to Trump's ballot removal in Colorado. And now, let's see what you guys have to say about this before we head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. We had some great donos in the house today. Tony Hay Munkets is kicking us off. Thank you, Tony. Very generous. It's a beautiful Friday, my friends. Thank you for sending these in. We got this one from Tony Hay, bringing in W. Daisy Girl Williams, Mama Pillow. We got Lowell S. Mainers in the house. Saffon also coming in, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets in the house. Glocky McGlockface is here. Here's a meme of Cassidy Hutchinson. Apparently, these are those guys who whisper in your ear, right? Hey, Cassidy, tell him Trump attacked the Secret Service and grabbed the steering wheel and grabbed him by the clavicle. She says, and that's when he reached across and grabbed him by the clavicle. And they start dying laughing. Oh my gosh, I can't believe she said it. Gosh, this is so ridiculous. Here's another one from Glocky. Says, don't let these annoying identical twins fool you. One is annoying, loud, and obnoxious and is a Muppet. The other is Miss Piggy. But we got Glockies here with another meme. Says, and then the man dressed up in a bear and yelled, freedom. But he yelled it like really loud. Like he yelled it really loud. Kinzinger's crying his eyes out. Thank you for those. Glocky McGlock in the house. Freddie York is a supporter. Welcome aboard, Freddie York. We've got, here's a good one from Glocky McGlockface sharing a bunch of memes today. Says, when you post so many memes that you radicalize your assigned FBI agent. That's what our goal here is. I mean, I know we've got feds in the chat, who censored us after January 6th. They demonetized the whole channel. We had multiple strikes here for election misinfo, medical misinfo during COVID, all the things. But we just keep going because the feds are eventually going to learn something about the Constitution and they're going to join our side. We want our FBI agents to come join us. Hopefully you guys sign up on Locals too. Come and join us. Glocky's here sharing this one. Donald Trump is to star in Fast and Furious 10 called The Capitol Riot. Good stuff from Glocky. Good memes. Hey, that's probably, oh yeah, I remember. They're recreating the scene when Melania was hanging from the helicopter rope ladder. I remember that. Amazing. Glocky, hilarious. Thank you for those. We got this old guy says, Supreme Court granted cert. This old guy, man, you broke the news. And we'll hear arguments in February, just in. And this old guy, I think I saw a couple people sent one in. And thank you for that. It was great. It worked out perfect. Thank you to the Supreme Court for timing it in between our segments. Appreciate that. I would have appreciated it before the show started. So next time, maybe before, 5 p.m. Eastern time, Supreme Court. But it worked. Thank you, this old guy. Sean Colson says, I think all Republican states should remove Harris from the ballot for her direct support of Chaz, right? Which she did, which was by definition a violent uprising against an authority or government. It was an insurrection. Yeah, she posted. I think her post is still up there. Says, well, she said, yeah, she was posting for bond to get people out who I think burned down the 3rd Minneapolis precinct in Minneapolis. And was that Chaz or was that Chop? Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone? Is that what that was? Yeah, she should be absolutely removed along with Joe. Mr. J, thank you, Mr. J. Boom, certiorari granted for Colorado. Boom. Great job, Harmeet. Harmeet Dillon is amazing. She's got a great law firm and a great X account. If you're not following her, you should be. Freedom Forever says SCOTUS is taking Trump's case arguments Feb 18th. Man, thank you guys for those, for flagging that when it happened. Otherwise, I would have missed it, honestly. NY says, over on Locals, sounds like Joe Biden is an insurrectionist. He's facilitating a foreign invasion. Remove him. F the Magician is here, says, wasn't our country founded by insurrectionists? Yeah. Wasn't George Washington, our first president, an insurrectionist? Well, if you ask King George, I'm sure he would say accordingly. We fought a whole war over it. Rocky says, hey, Rob, probably won't see you tomorrow. So wanted to wish you in advance a happy January 6th. You doing anything special for tomorrow or just enjoying the day in junk? Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm probably going to commit some sort of an insurrection. I haven't decided what insurrection I want to do yet. I might want to, Saturday at the gym, probably insurrect these biceps tomorrow, I don't know. Maybe insurrect the whole pizza tonight. I don't know. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Whatever we're doing, we're going to be celebrating. Hopefully you're also doing insurrections yourself, my friends. Cowboy Rob is here, says, if Jamie Raskin wants Trump off the ballot, then why hasn't he introduced a bill in front of Congress to get Trump off the ballot? Yeah, that's a good point. He happens to be a congressman. LMAO, because he can't. Yeah, he can't, because there's not enough there. They have no other option, which is why they're just going to try to get him off the ballot. Yeah, it's going to be, Good to see you, Cowboy Rob. Mark Owens in the house. Mark, no question, but thanks for the very nice dono. 1111 in the house. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for being a member, too. We got the Chugi Show. Says, still cooking, but I worry I'm starting to show. Okay, 4 months. 4 months, Membo. We're almost halfway there to a baby. Still warming up in there, but yeah, starting to pop out a little bit. That's all right, Chugi. You're still as beautiful as ever. We got Goofy for Jesus. Says, I was stationed in Guam. When BRAC happened, they shut down the S Naval Base. I was concerned that the Northern Air Force Base would tip it over. LOL, LOL. So I don't know. Look, man, I'm not a congressman, okay? I'm not that smart as I haven't been elected to Congress. Maybe he knows something that we don't know. Maybe these islands are like big boats floating around. I don't know. He is congressman after all. We got Chubby's here, says Chutkin doesn't have to recuse herself for things she directly said and did. So why should Thomas be expected to recuse for something someone else did? It's a great point, Chubby. Yeah, Chutkin didn't recuse herself from anything, and she's been talking garbage about Trump in her courtroom throughout multiple cases. Goofy for Jesus is bringing in backseat driver. What's up, Goofy? And welcome aboard, backseat. Good to have you in the house. NY's on Local says, the J6 committee is not a court, and the Supreme Court is deciding matters of con law and not the triers of fact like a lower court. Judge Bader Ginsburg, Ruth, RBG, remember her? The patron saint of abortion, was fervent advocate for abortion and an important litigant for the movement. No gang of idiots or Rep. Goldman ever suggested that Ginsburg recuse herself from involvement in abortion. Hypocrite much, Goldman? Good comment, NY. You're right about all of that. And they just pick and choose because they're political hacks. CGI Joe bringing in 10 membos. Thank you for doing that, Joe. Look who's coming in. Tia T, Save America. Trump is here. Good name on that one. Oklahoma Freedom's here. Toenail is here. Greg E, Eric V, Mike H, Clyde B, Ghosty Ghost is in the house, along with David H in the house. Very nice to see you. And CGI Joe, thanks for bringing in the 10 newest membos. Tony Hayes here, also gifting one to Nobody. Got a gift from Tony Hay. Welcome aboard, Nobody. Chubby says, in 2021, I was in a near fatal motorcycle accident, run off the road by a drunk driver. I still suffer PTSD from it. Can't even handle hearing a motorcycle engine purr. Yet this guy can calmly walk through a recreation of his PTSD-inducing event? Hogwash. Chubby, I'm sorry that happened to you, my man. And I hope you're on your road to recovery. Terrible thing. Glad that you are okay. And I'm sure it's a lot. Now, I really much appreciate your comment because I thought the same thing. I've never been through something like that, but he said that this was a traumatic thing. And he's like, he's like, no, a little bit more, throw more papers over there. He's like a director, he's like back there. This is pretty close, but I'm going to need a lot more insurrecting. Okay. So I need someone else without weapons to come. I need someone else with like a flag, like wave around your insurrection flag to steal the country with your waving. More of that. So, and then he's like, oh no, but seriously though, I'm hurt. Okay. NY says, okay, the J6 committee, we got that. Rosie's here, says words of wisdom for the former Capitol Hill police officer running for Senate. Wisdom from Forrest Gump. Thank you, Rosie. Eternal wisdom. Mama said, stupid is as stupid does, from our friend Forrest and Jenny. We got this one from Chubby. In 2021, we got, thank you for that, Chubby. And here, C. Wolf says, our president is publicly calling for the persecution of an entire political class. Yeah, has been for a while. Doesn't the Constitution and the Civil Rights Act protect classes based on politics, religion, race, and disability? How is that legal? How is it not legally actionable? So it's a great question, but there's a lot going on. So it's who's going to sue him? What are they going to sue him for? Where are they going to sue him? It's really, kind of a political question. I think that the courts would, what are you going to sue him for? Calling you a bad part of the country, I guess. Like the courts, I think, would just dismiss it as a political question, and he's protected by free speech. So if there's actual discrimination against somebody, like if the federal government discriminates against somebody, they might have an individual claim, but as a citizenry, we just have to respond. It's politics. We just got to respond and vote in the right candidates, which is what we're trying to do here, Seawolf. It's a good question. NY says, Maryland's 3rd congressional district is heavily blue, 62% for Hillary, 69% for Biden. A Baltimore district, which of course makes total sense, which is where Dunn is running in Maryland. This one from Air Force vet says, what's up, Air Force? Says ISIS was able to detonate 2 bombs in Iran because they were not paying attention. Guess who is not paying attention in the USA? Oh yeah, it's coming. The FBI is chasing the wrong people. I think you're probably right about that, Air Force vet. I hope that it does not. I hope that our, security state can actually secure the country, but I doubt that they can, because they couldn't even protect the Capitol when there were announcements that people were going to be there. So unless even if the terrorists said, we're going to blow up this building, I don't know that the FBI would figure it out. They'll just say, oh, because then Trump could say, do you guys want some help with that? And they'd say, no, blow it up, because that's who's really in charge. Knox is here, says it's even worse than what we think. Dan Bongino, former Secret Service, explained that they had a G fence around the area which would catch every cell phone's data. So that is absolutely true. They were gobbling up data. They were even going after banking records, right, of everybody who was there, trying to go after the banks to get their records. Like it was a giant ensnarement by the feds, and it was disgusting. Good to see you, Knox. Yeah, Dan Bongino's doing a great job. Solar-powered, fence-mounted intrusion detection. Weird. Air Force vet says, by the way, it was a YouTube issue with the money. Ah, okay. Yeah, Air Force, I remember you said yesterday you couldn't make donos. And so you got it figured out. I'm glad you did, because we need that revolver fund money. And we're solving the national debt now, too, you heard. B. Torn is here. Hank Johnson said that because earlier he was counting cash in his freezer and the Freon was leaking out. So he was just a little bit high. He was just a little bit high. Is the island going to capsize? No, because it's an island. Thanks for asking. We have this one for Air Force. From Air Force says, name me one thing President Trump did against America. I don't know. He wanted to secure our border, I guess, which was something he wanted no more wars. He wanted a good economy. I don't know. Not his personal life. One thing against America. COVID was Fauci's scam. And, we were listening to, what's his name, Mayorkas this morning on our member stream. And it didn't sound like he even works for us at all. Like, it sounds like they work for another country, a foreign country. Like, they're not even our representatives, our people. It's weird. NY says, the most valuable lesson we learn as children, how do we handle cheaters at schoolhouse games? How do we handle cheaters at schoolhouse games? I don't know. I guess it depends on your upbringing. I don't know. A lot of different options there. Depends what game it is. Depends how old we are, I guess. And depends what they're doing if they're cheating. That's a lot of variables there. I have a lot of ideas. Here, Lady Ice says, so in other words, this is what they plan on doing to the MAGA insurrectionists after the next selection, or the re-education camps that Hillary spoke about. From Lady Ice. Lady Ice says, thank you, Lady Ice, for that one. Knox is here, says TGIF all. Hope everyone is enjoying the first week of 2024. Knox, our friend in Texas. Same to you, Knox. Happy New Year. Happy New Year week. KX250 says, nice show again. You are the nickname king. Thanks. Oh, the nickname king? Well, I don't know about that, but I do have fun with them. I think the best one this week was Crazy Eyes. She definitely has crazy eyes. That was a fun one. And you could see it. Her eyes were like, ah, like, relax. Gosh. Like, could you imagine? It's like, honey, you want to go out to dinner? Like having a conversation with her. She like looks at you. We ate there last week. Ah! Like, chief, calm down, psycho. All right. This old guy says, having had the opportunity to talk with some people who are absolutely 100% invested in the craziness represented by this propaganda, I can tell you that they really, really believe this crap. I know. Grab anyone you know who will go to the polling places and take them to vote. They believe it. I follow them on X. I mean, I watch these people. They're like posting every day. It's kind of sad almost, you know, like I had empathy for the COVID people who like were petrified to death. I'm like, I felt bad for them because our government was doing it to them. Our government was scaring them to death unreasonably. And, you know, a lot of people listen to their government, you know, and I was even at that time like, okay, well, this is what they said. I mean, I guess they know. And before you start to realize they're lying through their teeth at you about everything because they don't have our interest at stake. But other people who are still locked away down in Plato's cave, watching the shadows on the wall, I want to free those people, man. Let's free them. Let's wake them up. Now, there's a good portion of those people who are going to be perfectly willing to stay down and reside in the cave. And that's their prerogative. I love freedom. And if they want freedom to be ignorant and to go down with the sinking ship of the government, that's their prerogative. We can save only those who want to be awoken. That's it. Which law to be reviewed has Ginny's name on it? From Bitorn. Which law to be reviewed has Ginny's name on it? I don't think any of them. And the purpose of them bringing her up is to just try to sideline Clarence Thomas. Linda H is in the house. Membo for 4 months. Cheers to the generous gifters. Shout out to our generous gifters. We're grateful for our Membo gifters in the house. Good to see you, Linda. Thanks for being a Membo for 4 months, almost halfway to a baby. We got Seawolf says, the surveillance system mentioned in the anti-Trump trailer propaganda is already being used on conservatives. That trailer isn't the future, it is now, and is another example of the confession through projection MO of the left. Good comment from C. Wolf. Yeah, I mean, they typically accuse Trump of doing the things that they're doing. The other example that we saw of this was Liz Cheney saying that Trump is going to appoint a bunch of unappointed people, unsenate confirmed people, which is exactly what Jack Smith is. Air Force Vet is here saying, hey, waving to the FBI agent watching me from down the street. P.S. This one is for the IOU I left on X for you, Rob. Oh, thanks, Air Force Vet. All right, thank you for that. Leaving IOUs on X. I'm down for it. And thanks for making good on it, you know. Sometimes you never get those IOUs back. But shout out to our FBI agents. Okay, we're all waving to the feds. Hello, feds. Hopefully you learned something today. Did you bring your notebook and your crayons today? That's good. If you take good notes today, we're going to make you some French fries and chicken nuggets for your dinner. All right, so Woodchip Bill says Biden's speech was totally appalling. It was on the same order as his other speech in Philly. Did he talk today? I think he flew back from his sunburnt vacation, hanging out next to Hillary down there. And he's now going to lecture us about January 6th. So tomorrow, it's just going to be wild. All right, so that's fun. Thank you for that, Woodchip Bill. We'll have to watch it. We're going to, we do our members only morning streams on Saturdays. So we'll see what he says. We got Red-Blooded American in the house. What's up, Red-Blooded American? Thanks for being a member on our channel. Thanks for the dono. Thanks for sending in the amazing Nintendo gamepad, who is seriously based in the house with those glasses. Thanks for that, Red-Blooded American. Appreciate it. Cowboy Rob says, I hope Clarence Thomas just says no. And you can't make me. I like that too. In the SCOTUS order, No, and you can't make me, signed Judge Clarence Thomas. Read it and weep, jerks. I like it. We got Tony Hay says, we are a republic democracy. That's fine. And while we don't just agree with you, Joe, that isn't how democracy works. From Tony Hay Munkets in the House. Yeah, they keep saying this word democracy. And, you know, the new thing they're fighting for, like we heard from Raskin, is voting, integrity, voting rights and all these things, which is a euphemism for rigging the vote. Rocky's here. Rocky Water on the locals says, hey, Rob, you know, I got to give old Hank a cheers. Bless that guy's soul. He has a number of amazingly embarrassing clips from his freshman year alone. The island tipping vid going viral had to have hurt. Now, he knows he's dumb, and he knows we know he's dumb, but his district must love him. They keep electing him overwhelmingly over and over. So here's to you, Hank. Way to just pull one over on your entire district for like 20 years. Incredible job. He came back and he's like, well, I thought the island was going to capsize. And all of his constituency was like, it's a great question. In fact, we were concerned about that too. So are you sure that the island is not going to tip over? And he says, oh, absolutely true. I got total assurances from the military who was there in the Congress with me. So not going to be falling over. You can call all your residents. Island safe. We love you. We're going to vote for you next year. Here's some campaign contributions. Facts Matter says, my mom and stepdad believe this insanity. Thank God I got my dad's sense. Whew. Yeah, see, I've got no family who's deluded like this. We're all on pretty much the same side. Well, that's not true. That's not true. Auntie, you know who you are. I think you listen to this show. I have one aunt, you know, who's amazing. We love you. We love you. However, we're going to get you to convert soon, I'm sure, no doubt. We got this one from Jeffrey Campbell's in the house. Welcome aboard, Jeffrey Campbell. And Woodchip says, Rob, you don't want to watch that one. You don't want to watch Joe Biden. It's unwatchable after 2 minutes. Yeah, I imagine that. I can only typically tolerate about 2 minutes because he starts mumbling. He can't even talk. If he could talk, I'd listen to him, but he can't talk. So those, my friends, were the very generous and incredible donations and donos. Thank you for joining us on and supporting us with that amazing work. Let's say hello to our friends on X before we wrap it up on this lovely Friday. Let's see who's joining us in the house. Who's watching us on the X platform? We got some people watching here today. Okay. What's up, JB? Says, yeah, Chop is the artist formerly known as Chaz because it sounds like Chad. I remember Chaz, Chop, that whole thing. Supreme Court is hearing it. Thank you, Raven Madness. Goofy for Jesus says, bruh, why you got to use my Goofy name in vain? You know, that's true, Goofy for Jesus. I didn't realize that. Yeah. We called the Goofy Capitol Hill. He's Goofy. I don't know. But not Goofy for Jesus. Otherwise, well, we'll leave that there. JB says, the first breach at the Capitol happened at the point when one senator and one congressman contested Arizona. A vote to adjourn to form a committee for investigation never happened, right? We were watching it. Ted Cruz was there objecting. Old Drill Sergeant says 1984 is now. That video is scary. Raven is saying good old Hank is a cotton is whatever that guy said. JB says, I'm not surprised Anderson Cooper knows how to calculate Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. I'm not surprised Anderson Cooper knows how to calculate length. Hank serves in and for Atlanta, Georgia. Not flipping anytime soon. No, of course not. Al Holman says, great work again this week. Stay in shape. It's going to be a long and wacky year. You're right, Al, which is why we're doing our fitness challenge. Last day is today to sign up for it. We got to be fit, man. We got to get our bodies and minds properly situated so that we can survive what's to come. Here, James Pepper says, Rob, my petition has over 1,000 signatures saying your home might be a part of a toxic poisoning America site. This is a change.org petition from James Pepper. Ooh, that's interesting. So check that out over on the X. Says Thomas can be far more equitable than Engeron. Fred says, Rob, this may be a dumb question. Why is the DOJ in the executive branch and not in the judicial branch? Separation of powers. It's not a dumb question. Separation of powers. The DOJ is really it's the prosecutors. They say justice, so like you think that they're just, they're not. They could call themselves Office of Prosecutions or something like that. They are the. It's a necessary, like the judge needs to, the judiciary needs to be independent. Another branch brings the charges against the defendant who's a private citizen. And so that's how you keep you don't want, in other words, the prosecutors ruling on their own motions, which is what would happen if they were all together, which you could argue happens now anyways. James Pepper says the guard is angry because he always wants to be Jack Black. And Danny McWilliams is in the house, says February 8th is going to be when oral arguments are. We're going to know if we have a country still. That will be a new day of a beginning. I agree. I think if Trump is kept off the ballots, if our Supreme Court does not rectify this, big problems ahead. May not be immediately, maybe another year or 18 months, but probably the beginning of a very, very significant change in America. If you can't vote for your candidates in this country because a couple bureaucrats say so, it's going to be a big deal. So, my friends, thanks for following us on the X platform. You can follow along at Rob Govea ESQ. We post a bunch of all of our stuff there. So thank you for retweeting it. Thanks for sharing our X stuff with friends and family members. We don't get much distribution on YouTube, if at all. So thanks for sharing our stuff on X. Thanks for signing up for our newsletter at robertgovea.com and sharing those there as well. We are going to wrap it up and go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We got a members-only after party taking place there. For members, we got a members-only Saturday show taking place tomorrow, Saturday. And so we would love to have you join us. We have great members-only conversations. They're a lot of fun. Rocky Waters says, according to his house.gov site, Hank Johnson was also a magistrate judge for 12 years. Very serious laughter happening there because it's kind of hysterical that he's probably asking defendants if they're going to capsize any minute now. Yeah, it's pretty hysterical. These are the people who govern us, okay? It's not good. It's not good at all. So we are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Last day to sign up for our fitness challenge. We got a bunch of activity over there. Super excited about it. I posted my day 5 fitness challenge update today. Let's make sure that we share that with you. So you can see when you go here to the lodge and click the fitness challenge, you can watch the full fitness challenge update. This is day 5. I'm going to post my video from the gym here as soon as we're done here. We got day 4 yesterday, our update, day 3, day 2, and day 1. And so if you want to join us, just come in and get started. Just start posting your stuff on the days. And then we're going to start keeping track starting today. And then at the end of the 31 days in February, we're going to have our final event, our fitness challenge event in, wait a minute, that's the lodge calendar. Let's check the community calendar. Our final fitness event is going to be on February 5th. You can see here. So on Monday, we're going to do our first fitness check-in. We're going to have 4 of those for all 4 weeks. We're getting healthy. We're getting fit. We're going to outlift the tyrants. We're going to be better looking and just much more energized than them. And so come and check us out, watcherlodge.com. And after we're done with this fitness challenge, well, even before we're done, we got a bunch of other stuff cooking. We're going to talk about sovereignty, self-development. I want to talk about money, making some money on the interwebs and how I've got some skill set to do that and share that with you. We're also going to bring in people to talk about food supply, talk about communication, about anonymizing how you interact on the internet, all this type of sovereignty stuff, which I couldn't be more excited about because I think the world is going into a little bit of a tailspin for the foreseeable future, and we want to be prepared. And you can't carry your gear, all your cool survival gear, if you can't run around the block. You know what I'm saying? So we got to start with fitness. Come check it out, watcherlodge.com. The fitness challenge is well underway. We got a lot of great comments, a lot of great people participating, and we're kicking it into the weekend. And so come and join us. We got 3 weeks left of our 31 days. So watcherlodge.com is the place to go. Before we wrap it up, I want to say thank you to the mods and the meme smiths who mod down the fort for us and keep things oh so nice and orderly. We've got the Anti-Kiss Prime in the house. K-Bean clipping away. Just Cause, playing hooky. Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu. Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, and our friend Donut Mind Me. Modding down the fort for us. We're very grateful for you. Thanks for keeping things nice and orderly. Our friends who are meme smiths, Geegum Geegum, Sleepy Dog Lee, and of course Nathan N810 in the house. And so we are going to leave it there, my friends. You can also grab some new gear at the Watcher shop, which is at robertgovea.com. Click the shop button, grab a hat. Great way to support us. I very much appreciate however you decide to support us, but grabbing some gear is a good way to do it. And I love this hat, man. I wear it all the time. So that is going to be it for us on the day, my friends. It is our first week of 2024. It has been a busy week, and I think it's just getting started. So we always need to unplug over the weekends, just a smidge, so that we can recharge our batteries, spend time with the family and the friends that we love, get outside, get some vitamin D, get some fresh air, unplug from politics just a little bit, so that when we come back here on Monday, we are recharged, refreshed, and ready to go. And we're going to be back here, and we need to see you so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful weekend, my friends. Happy 2024. We'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.